Before we jump into this episode, I wanted to let you know that GYET is now on Patreon. So at GYET, if you join us on Patreon, you get access to features, benefits that no one else can get. You won't see this on YouTube. You won't hear this on Spotify. If you sign up at the startup level, because this is all about entrepreneurship, the startup level, you'll get ad-free episodes, except for my ad reads, with outtakes included. So you'll get to see when we stumble, we make funny comments, we make mistakes. You'll be able to see all of that and laugh along with us. You will access the Patreon founder level members' questions to the experts. So I'll get into a little bit more of that later, but you will have more inside access to these entrepreneurs that I'm interviewing. You'll also get a PDF of my handwritten episode notes with questions that I have planned to ask and maybe some that I didn't get to during the episode. Now, if you want to join and support at the founder level, this is where you'll get everything at the startup level, but you'll also get access to a live updating Google Sheet with show information and filming dates. Why that is important is because you will have the opportunity at this level to be backstage while the episode is filming. So you won't have to wait until the episode comes out to watch. You can watch from backstage and just be right there right now. Also, you'll have 5 of you will have the opportunity to ask the entrepreneur that I'm interviewing a question right then and there. And also, this entrepreneur might have some special gifts and incentives for you, so you will be there live in case they want to drop any links or promo codes or gifts to you. So these are the ways that you can support GYET here on Patreon. I would really appreciate that support. It helps me grow the channel, bring more entrepreneurs that you want to hear from on. So thank you so much for your time and enjoy the episode. This is Get Your Entrepreneurship Together, where you'll find stories, tips, and value from successful entrepreneurs who are out there crushing it. Here's a short preview of this week's episode.
And I went from like no structure, no safety, no security to the opposite, where somebody's telling you all the time what to do.
I'm not the biggest fan of Dick Cheney, but I still don't want somebody to hack his internal defibrillator and turn him off.
So I thought it would be cool to become a penetration tester or a hacker.
And welcome back to the show, everyone. My name is Brian Elam. I will be your host here on Get Your Entrepreneurship Together. And today is going to be a great conversation. I have Christian Espinosa waiting in the wings to come out and tell you his story and just dive into what it takes to start multiple companies, but to also not only that, but better yourself as an entrepreneur and as a human being. This man has started 2 very successful cybersecurity companies. He is an author, most notably the author of The Smartest Person in the Room and the latest book, The In-Between, Life in the Micro. So this is going to be a great conversation. So stay tuned for all of it. Christian, thank you so much for coming on, man. It is a pleasure to have you here.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on, Brian. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. You're very welcome. I want to start off by asking kind of a little bit of an off-the-wall question. How independent of a person are you?
I would say 100%. I mean, I like to have a wife and people around me, but I can survive in isolation very easily with for long periods of time. Yes.
Okay. And where did that come from? I know, in doing a little bit of research, childhood and upbringing wasn't,
Mm-hmm.
the white picket fence, cookie cutter, American dream. Is that where that independence kind of got fostered? And if so, how did that really come about in you?
I think my childhood had a large part to play in it. I realized I couldn't depend on anybody. My mother was addicted to pain meds and other drugs. She'd get arrested and be in jail a lot, and the cops are always over, and lots of car wrecks, lots of chaos, and a lot of poverty. We lived in a single wide trailer in Arkansas. So I think I developed that independence then because I wanted to get out of my environment. I had this intense drive to not become a product of my environment, which gave me this sort of me against the world attitude. I thought, I'm going to prove everybody wrong. Everybody in my town, a small town in Arkansas, like 5,000 people, knew of my situation. It was kind of embarrassing. And I knew they all expected me to fail and fall in the same footsteps. So I wanted to prove everybody wrong and show I could, become something better. So yeah, I was 100% sufficient because I figured I didn't have anybody to rely on. And that's been something that got me pretty far, that like me against the world, 100%, I could do everything myself attitude. It got me pretty far, but then I hit a ceiling where I realized I can't scale beyond this until I start like letting other people in that I trust and validate and have them as part of my journey so I can go, further along, because it takes more than just one person to build something big. So it's been like quite the journey of like, you go through these phases. At least for me, I learn something, then I have to unlearn it to get to like the next level. But I still have those aspects of me from the past as well.
Yeah, we all do. We all have those stories and those scars, as they say, that we carry with us and
Mm-hmm.
move forward with. You mentioned, wanting to prove everybody wrong, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs, that listen to this can relate to that. How many times were you told, when you started your business, oh, you can't do that, or that's crazy, or that'll never work, and it's just fuel for a certain type of entrepreneur. And I think a lot of them listen to this show. So yeah, very cool. And when you were coming up, you wanted to get out, you wanted to prove everybody wrong. Was the Air Force your way out?
I decided to apply, I think when I was a junior in high school, to every single scholarship available. I thought the only way I'm going to get out of my environment is to get a scholarship. So I applied for everyone. I applied for every military academy, a Pell Grant, like everything. I got accepted to like pretty much most of them because I applied myself in high school. I was number 2 in my class, all state football, all state track. But I decided to go to the Air Force Academy because I didn't want to be in the Navy. I watched the movie Top Gun, which is my inspiration to fly jets. That's what I wanted to do in the Air Force. I know it's Top Gun's about the Navy, but I didn't want to live on an aircraft carrier. So yeah, that's where I went. It wasn't at all what I expected. It was very, very regimented and very, military like. I came from a very chaotic environment. There's no order, no structure, nothing. And I went from like that to very structured and ordered. And it was a major culture shock for me. But yeah, I went there and ended up not flying jets because of cutbacks, and did communications and cybersecurity in the military.
Mm. Okay, and so I was going to get to that. Like, where did the cybersecurity thing come in? But how um, how did that structure and that discipline? How did that influence how you got into entrepreneurship? Did it help you?
I think it actually had the opposite effect,
Oh,
because I
interesting.
went, the pendulum swings so far. I went from like completely no structure, like I was the parent to my mother basically, and I went from like no structure, no safety, no security, to the opposite, where somebody's telling you all the time what to do. So I thought, okay, this is what I wanted because had a void in my childhood. So after I got out of the military, I took a 9 to 5 job where I had that, perceived sense of stability, that structure, that security, all these like perceptions you make up. And I it took me a long time to like let that go and decide to step into entrepreneurship, because I had to realize like innately I want to take risk. I want to feel like I'm moving forward with agency over my own life. But because of my childhood, I swung so far the other direction. It took me a long time to unravel that and finally take that step into entrepreneurship.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I could see that. You would have to try to find the balance between the two because of that, like you said, that really wide swing. And so I'm glad
Hmm.
you explained that and went into that, because at first when you said it, it struck me as like, well, it didn't help at all. Are you kidding?
Well, it helped because in business, there's a lot of chaos. It helped me because I could thrive in a very dynamic, chaotic environment. I'm comfortable in that environment, so it helped me in that sense, right? But it was something I had to finally like learned to embrace that this is what I really want in life versus what you're brainwashed to want. You're kind of brainwashed in American society to want, a mortgage, the house, a car payment, a wife, 3 kids, white picket fence, and all that stuff, and a 9 to 5 job for corporate America. If that's what you want, that's fine. And I was kind of brainwashed too. I thought that was the definition of success. And I didn't come from a successful childhood. So I thought, oh, I should strive for this. But when I got there, I'm like, this is really not fulfilling. It may fit the definition of success, but it's not fulfilling. And when I decided to like take a step and start my own business, I had, which I thought my friends at the time, telling me the opposite. Like I should not do that I'm crazy. I'm leaving a high paying job and all this other stuff. I may lose everything. And I realized later I had surrounded myself by the wrong friends that wanted me to stay like where I was and not take the step which I really wanted to take.
Yeah, crabs in a bucket, as they say.
Yes, exactly. You pull the other ones back, right?
Right. So, as you were in the military, and you said you got into cybersecurity from there, with all that structure and being told you're going to do this, that, and the other thing, and exactly when, was that a choice that you had, or were they like, we looked at your aptitude and you're going to go over here into cybersecurity? How did that play out?
I wanted to be a pilot first, but I majored in electrical engineering, so that gave me other options. One of the main options was a communications officer. So since I didn't get the pilot slot, I became a communications officer and decided not to reapply for the pilot slot. And that led me to a job initially where I just did IT. And the next job I took, I had a choice of applying for various jobs based on my skill set or my code. And I applied for a job that focused on cybersecurity. Or it wasn't called cybersecurity back then, it's called information assurance. But basically, I was responsible for making sure like secret networks or classified networks remain classified and the hackers couldn't get into them. The enemy couldn't get into and steal our secrets.
Hmm. Yeah, that sounds pretty important, I would think. Yeah. Absolutely. And so when you got into that and started doing it, you found that, I'm assuming, you had a passion for it, that you were good at it, and you kind of wanted to continue. Am I going down the right road there?
I don't know if so much I had a passion for it. I had a passion for building some wealth and moving forward and building on what I had already learned. So in the military, I loosely did cybersecurity. As I said, it was like protecting classified data. But what I saw in the future was this big movement towards cybersecurity. I knew it was going to be a concern. So I thought it would be cool to become a penetration tester or a hacker and do that commercially. And that's what I ended up doing. It took a lot of work to get there, but that's what I ended up doing because, you see these movies like whatever, Sneakers from a long time ago, and, hackers of all these people hacking into stuff. It seems very sexy and cool.
Yeah.
It's not quite like the movies, but I thought this would be something interesting to do. And I'll put myself out there a little bit because I have to learn how to like kind of become a con man if you're doing social engineering and things like that. So that's what I focused on. That's what I ended up doing. And that's what I built my career on.
Very interesting.
So I'm passionate about it, but I wasn't like, I was more passionate. I thought about flying jets. I'm more of a, I guess, a jock or whatever you want to label. I in my head, because most of my team have always thought I was a jock versus a geek, right? Even though I can geek out with the best of them, for some reason I'm still perceived as like a jock. I don't know where that comes from. Maybe because I played football and I do Ironman triathlon or whatever.
Yeah, you've competed in what, 24 Ironmans? Is that right?
Yes, I've started and finished 24 Ironman triathlons.
That is just number one, it's impressive as hell. Number two, you're a crazy person. And number three, I still have a lot of respect for the amount of discipline and work that it takes to do something like that. And obviously that's going to help you out in a whole lot of aspects of your life. But let's go into, actually, I want to go back just a little bit here. So we were talking about versions of success earlier, and that really being the driver really for you to get out of your state, better yourself, and like you said, build wealth, which is not something somebody really thinks about all that often when they talk about success and building wealth. So,
hmm
in that vein, what is your definition of success, and how can we as a society better define what success is?
For me, success is where I feel comfortable in my own skin, regardless of what situation I'm in. So if I'm in a room full of billionaires, millionaires, whatever, I'm comfortable. I remember in the past, I would go to an event that was full of all millionaires and I would feel uncomfortable. And now I feel comfortable. So even if I'm in a room full of billionaires, it doesn't matter what room I'm in. I want to feel comfortable with who I am, what I've gone through, how resourceful I am, and what I bring to the table. That to me is success. It's not a number. It's feeling comfortable in my own skin, and also, the three areas of life. I feel like I want to keep moving the needle forward. My health, my wealth, my relationships. Of course, I want those to move forward, but it's more feeling comfortable and at peace with who I am. I think as society, we tend to define success based on what other people think it is. I think it's important to like tune into yourself and just define what you think success is. It doesn't have to be a monetary thing. I mean, some of the happiest people I've been in the world have been in like living in huts in the middle of nowhere, So it's not like money is not going to make you happy. It has to be like feeling comfortable in your own skin, at least for me. Money certainly makes things easier, but also on the flip side, if you're kind of an asshole and you have more money, you're going to be an amplified asshole, So it all turns into like, how you feel about yourself ultimately.
Yeah, that's really great point. I'm glad that you went that personal route because you're right. A lot of projection and absorption from everybody else's thoughts and ideas can just really distort what
hmm
success is. And being comfortable in any room that you're in, that's a gift. Now, do you I don't know, do you lean on any kind of religion? Like you're a man of faith at all?
I I believe in God. I believe in something bigger than ourselves, and I've done a lot of work. I've done ayahuasca, and I think connected to something higher to remind me that I'm not alone in this world, that we're all connected. So yeah, I believe in something greater than myself.
I think that's a very good. No, I know that's a very good thing. And one of the other people that I interviewed on this show um, was a high level like executive coach, and he was saying that he was talking to this client of his who felt insecure in this particular room in this event that he was at because of the caliber of people that were surrounding him. And
Mhm.
he was a man of faith as well, and his coach knew that, and his coach said, John, do you really think that God, who is all knowing, all powerful, all seeing, do you really think that he would put you in a room where you do not belong?
Mhm.
And that, looking at it from that lens and his, religious standpoint, he was able to realize everywhere I am is where I'm supposed to be. So I think what you just said and that story I just retold, I think that will help a lot of people who maybe they feel like they're not the smartest person in the room. Wink, wink.
Yeah, I think everywhere I am is where I'm supposed to be is a very good way of looking at it. I've never thought about it from that lens, but yeah, I think that's awesome.
Excellent. And then you want to go back into the cybersecurity realm, and you mentioned that you doing the white hat hacking, I think they call it, the
Yeah.
systems penetration. That's how you kind of got your foot in the door in that industry. Coming from not having any business exposure at all in your family or in your friend circle, how in the world did you start that first company?
Well, I was working for a company as a VP for a cybersecurity company. I was doing aircraft penetration testing, so making sure commercial aircraft are secure from hackers and a few other things. And I had this run in with the CEO constantly, and it was causing me so much stress I couldn't sleep at night. So I decided to quit that job without having something else lined up. And that was like a defining moment. It was the moment where I decided I'm done with this perceived sense of stability and security and all this stuff. I'm just going to quit. And I didn't have another job lined up. I'd never done something like that. So I quit and I thought, I'm resourceful. I've got connections. I'm going to try my hand at freelance or solopreneur work. I did that. I got a lot of penetration testing work. I got a lot of teaching work, training other cybersecurity professionals. And then I did that work for about 6 years and decided that I was kind of bored with it. I kind of hit a plateau. I'm like, I'm not really contributing to the level I think I can contribute. I'm not really growing. So I decided to start a business and hire people. And I thought this will force me to grow and get to the next level and force me to contribute back to society and help people. That's what I did. That's how I started my first cybersecurity business. That I had other people. I'm not counting my solopreneur work really.
Right, right. So you said you hit a plateau. What was that plateau?
That plateau for me was, I was making a lot of money, taking several months off a year, traveling the world. And it was just like this feeling, this constant nagging that I'm not living into my potential. I'm not stepping into what I'm capable of. And after a while, it just got so heavy on me, such a like constant feeling that I thought, I need to act on this because I realized in my life, if I don't listen to my inner gut, that any the times I haven't listened to it, I've made horrible mistakes. So I thought my gut is telling me this. It's a constant feeling. I need to act upon it, and that's what I did. And I probably waited way too long, to be honest.
Yeah, I think that happens to a lot of us. It happened to me too. I've been there in a situation where I've stayed for too long, and eventually it was, well, it literally was my gut that shut me down. I thought I came down with like some really nasty stomach flu or something.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's crazy. And just case in point, guys, if you're trying to make a decision about what you need to do inside of your business, trust your gut. It's that small voice in the back of your head, the one that whispers instead of everybody else's opinions that shout at you what you should do. Listen to your gut. Christian just laid it out right there. He was right. So listen.
Yeah,
Very
that
cool.
is so true. That is so true. But it's for me, it's been hard to do sometimes. You have this. If I
Oh, I
tune into
never said it
myself,
was easy.
the answer is crystal clear, right? But then you have all the noise out there telling you to do this, and then you logically try to rationalize that you shouldn't follow your gut, and then you postpone that decision, and it ends up costing you money. Like in my situation, I let the sales guy on that ended up costing me like probably $250,000 because I didn't get rid of him sooner, even though my gut said give this guy a move on, but I ignored it for a long time.
So yeah, you're right. I never said it was an easy thing to do. And like we talked about earlier, you hang on for too long for whatever reason. You don't want to be seen as the bad guy. You have trouble with confrontation. Whatever it is, we really do tend to hold on for too long. But I wanted to get your thoughts on this because I was thinking, kind of as we were talking about this, ways to enforce or reinforce that gut feeling and make it more tangible. You mentioned being a very resourceful person and that being one of the things that was able to launch you off into entrepreneurship. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on this. So if you start hearing that gut voice, do you think it would be valuable to write it down and then start pulling resources in your mind? Like, how can the people that I'm connected with, how can my current skill set actually make this thing happen that I don't quite believe yet? Do you think doing something like that would be valuable?
I think it'd be very valuable. I do that, but not as intentional as you mentioned. I don't write it down. I have a vision, and if I feel like my gut supports the vision, then I have faith that I can realize that vision. So I bring people on and invest the money to realize that vision because I feel like internally I have that gut instinct telling me that's the direction to go, but I'm not intentional probably enough with it where I don't write it down. I think that's probably something that would benefit me and benefit a lot of people. Like if you hear this gut feeling like every day and you write it down, you know it's pretty consistent. Even though you probably already know it's consistent, but just seeing it every day for 3 months, like, okay, I should let this person go. Okay, I should step in this direction. Whatever it is, I think if you write it down, I think that's a very good idea.
Yeah, because it gives you a visual. It gives you something. It's not just this thing that's rolling around in the back of your mind. Now it's on a piece of paper right in front of you, staring back at you, and it can make it more concrete. I mean, I think that's the whole thing behind, behind vision boards, is so
Yeah.
you see what you want to be, so you always know what you're striving towards. And
Yeah, and I use vision boards, but I haven't used it for like that gut instinct. But I think part of the challenge for me is, there's the gut, which is not really logical. It's just this feeling. But then there's a logic side, and we often like default to like our brain and logic to make decisions. But if I were to write it down every day, what my gut's telling me, that sort of like logically says, okay, for the last 35 days, you have felt this way. So logically, it ties the two together, and I think that's brilliant.
mm, excellent, good. I'm glad you found value in that. That's amazing. And so going back to the plateau and the building up of your first company, you started as the solopreneur, which a lot of entrepreneurs do. They don't just jump right in having this big organization. What does it take to go from that solo entrepreneur to actually having a team that's with you? Like, what is, I guess, I don't want to go down the whole rabbit trail of how to build a company step by step. We don't have enough time for that. But
Mm.
what would you say is the most important skill set or mental aptitude to have in order to do that?
I think there's a few things. I think one of them is mindset, of course. And I remember this African proverb that said, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with a group or a team. So I thought about that when I started a business, because I can go much faster alone, but not very far, right? So I think keeping that in mind, and then resilience is something that we all have to develop, especially as an entrepreneur, and resourcefulness, because it's definitely not going to be easy. You're going to have to learn to roll with the punches, which is resilience. You're going to have to learn to figure things out, which is the resourcefulness. And I think a lot of people read these books and think, oh, there's 5 steps to do this. If I follow the 5 steps at all, I'll be making $1 million a month, right? In my experience, it's never been like that. So I think realizing that is a lot of noise, and maybe it might work for you, but it's highly unlikely. But focusing on becoming more resourceful and more resilient. I think if you have those two things, you can make it through whatever happens on your entrepreneur journey. And a lot of us don't develop those skills.
Hmm. Why do you think those skills go undeveloped? Is it because we're looking for outside leadership, or is it something else?
I think it's because we live in a society where we constantly are bombarded by things that make it seem simple. Like, oh, to become a millionaire, just follow these 5 steps, or to become a billionaire, follow these 12 steps or whatever. And you could do it in 3 months. So I think we constantly hear this noise about how easy it is. That when somebody tries it and it doesn't come reality, they give up a little bit easier because they think, I'm not doing what is the norm, but the norm is just what noise really. So I think that's part of it, and I think we also live in a little bit of a watered down society where we're very comfortable. And any like sense of discomfort, like the power goes out for 30 minutes, we freak out, or the airplane is delayed for 30 minutes, we freak out. That those are like first world problems. If you travel the world and been to other countries, you realize those problems are pretty insignificant from a resourcefulness perspective and a resilience perspective. So I think we need to do hard things to become resilient and resourceful, and that's why I do Ironman triathlon. That's why I climb mountains. That's why I travel. That's why I go to new places and step outside my comfort zone, because all of these things contribute to building that resilience and that resourcefulness within you. If you're sitting on your couch all day watching TV, you're definitely not going to build resilience or resourcefulness.
That's so good. Yeah, you've got to be able to do hard things and come out the other side. And yeah, as a society, we've become a lot more sedentary, And if you have any aspirations of being a successful entrepreneur, you can't neglect, like you said, you can't neglect your mind for that resourcefulness, mindfulness, and you also can't neglect your body, because those things are linked. And the easiest thing, in my opinion, is to work on the physical and have that affect the mental. Because there's this old saying in weightlifting that the iron doesn't lie. You pick that up and try to move it around. If that's not where you're at, boy, you'll know it fast.
Mm. I like that, and I know a lot of weightlifters and people that work out consistently, and they've developed a discipline that is relatable to business or anything else. Just like you said, you can't cheat. If I can lift 50 pounds a day, curl it, the next day you can't do that. You can't lie about that, right? It's very very tangible.
It's very tangible. But one day when you pick it up and you can curl 60 pounds, I mean, how good does that feel? Because you knew where you
Exactly.
were at. Yeah,
Yeah.
it all adds up, and it all helps. It all compounds to grow that person. All right. So next, moving on just a little bit, you started your company. You've started adding employees. Now you're getting to the point in that first company where you're going to exit. What does it take to be able to set up a company to be able to exit? Are there like two or three things that you can like nail down for us, for maybe an entrepreneur that's listening is like, I want to exit in the next 5 years?
I think the main thing is a specific value proposition and a specific target audience you serve, and that an extension of that is a message, a specific message to your audience. Then the other thing is you have to have systems and processes in the business so the business can scale. Uh, it can't be ad hoc; it has to be very systematized. And the last thing I would say is have your cash flow figured out. That is a major problem for a lot of small business owners. They may have net 30 terms, or terms after they're done with a job. So I shifted all my terms to like payment up front, or maybe payment 50% up front, and every month there's a payment. So it really solved a lot of the cash flow issues, and that's extremely important for a business. And I guess the last thing I would say is, from a sellable perspective, if you're spending a lot of time on client acquisition and you have a one-time project that you cannot convert to an annual contract, that's a gap you need to close, because we want to reduce the client acquisition costs. And once we get a client, we want to keep them as much as possible. So for me, that was getting a client for a project, proving our value, proving that they want to work with us, and then converting that to an annual contract, which if you have annual contracts, that's much more um, sellable than just having projects that you acquire periodically.
Great stuff. Great stuff. I've asked that question to multiple interviewees, and it's never been answered in that way, which is why I love talking to different people. So that was really good. Thank you for that. Now, just curious, as I want to kind of do a two-part interview with you almost, because I want to touch on the authorship and especially your latest book. What would you say that you wish you knew? Like, man, I wish I knew this when I started my first company.
When I started my first company, I wish I knew that I needed to niche down and not sell, cybersecurity to everybody. I tried to sell cybersecurity to everyone, which effectively sold it to no one because I had a diluted message. So I wish I knew the value of specificity, really, and not generalness.
Mm, yep. And I think that's a very wise thing to focus on, because, like you said, if you're a specialist, you get paid more, you get to build more wealth than if you're just a generalist. You can think
Yes.
of it as a very concrete example as a doctor, like a family medicine doctor, versus a brain surgeon. Who do you
Hmm.
think makes more at the end of the year?
Right.
Exactly.
when you have your first business, it's a little bit challenging. At least it was for me, because I think if I specialize or niche down, then I'm going to be turning away revenue from all these other people potentially.
Hmm.
But then now with my current company, we're niche down to medical device cybersecurity. So we know specifically what we're targeting, the pain points of our clients. And if something doesn't fall in that swim lane or this niche, we're comfortable turning it away because it's a distraction away from like growing and becoming a market leader in one thing specifically.
Hmm. Yep, 100%. And just real quick before I forget, I wanted to touch on the whole next niche and the next company of Blue Goat Cyber. Um, why medical device security, and what does that look like? Are you protecting from like outside attacks? Like can hackers actually get into like a Da Vinci robot from the internet?
Yes. So we've actually worked on the Da Vinci robot, and yes, hackers can get into that from the internet.
Wow,
Uh,
that's crazy.
I don't know if anyone's heard the story of Dick Cheney. He had, lots of heart problems. He had a defibrillator, an implantable, and he actually had the wireless capability of it disabled because there was a legitimate threat. Somebody could wirelessly connect to it and shock him to death. So we work with implantables, in vitro diagnostic machines, which take a sample of your tissue and give you a diagnosis and a recommended course of treatment. We work with surgical robots, drug infusion pumps, anything that is in med tech, any medical device that has a software component. And this is extremely important for me. Uh, we did medical device cybersecurity with my first company, Alpine Security, which I started in 2014 and sold in 2020, but it wasn't our focus. As I mentioned, I was kind of like general, not focused. Now with Blue Goat Cyber, we focus on medical device cybersecurity. In 2022, I had almost died from 6 blood clots in my left leg, which were quickly diagnosed with a portable Doppler ultrasound medical device. And I think if it wasn't for that device, if that device was hacked or recalled, I may not be here. So I thought that was a sign after I got through my depression, being sitting around taking blood thinners. I thought maybe this is all a sign for me to start a company and focus on securing medical devices. Because if it wasn't for a medical device, or that device was recalled or hacked, I may not be here. So once I got out of that depression from like sitting around doing nothing and taking blood thinners, I decided to form this company and focus on that, and that's our niche.
Wow. It's a fantastic niche, especially because, like you said, those devices are vulnerable to cyber attacks, not just internal networks, but actually from the internet itself.
Mm-hmm.
That is just wild to me, and obviously super important. Um, I'm not the biggest fan of Dick Cheney, but I still don't want somebody to hack his internal defibrillator and
Well,
turn
that's an
him off.
example. You probably know other people with defibrillators and pacemakers, right?
Right, right. There's other people that are a little bit more endeared to you. Let's just say that.
Exactly. Well, a lot of people don't realize, like, on the average hospital bed, there's like 14 devices surrounding the bed or connected to the bed in some capacity. So that's 14 things on average that could be hacked by an attacker, either intentionally or unintentionally. So it's a big problem that nobody really thinks about too much.
Mm, man, incredible. Well, if there is one person out there to do it, it is you, brother. So I am glad that you're out there protecting these people as they're going through this medical journey, whatever it is, cancer, reconstructive surgery, the list goes on and on. But
Yeah.
yeah, God bless you for the work that you're doing. It's important.
Well, thank you.
100%. All right. So now I want to switch gears. We're going to move on from the entrepreneurship because, as you guys heard, Christian just dropped a bunch of gold, a bunch of insights from his entrepreneurship journey. So now we're going to jump into the, I guess you would call it the personal development side and the author side of what he does. We're going to talk about his latest book, The In Between, Life in the Micro, right here. And in case someone is unfamiliar with the story of how this book came about, can you kind of give us the Reader's Digest version of what inspired this book?
Yeah, I was working on several concepts for several books. The In Between Life and the Micro is one of them. And I witnessed this car accident in 2021 where a black truck T-boned like this blue car at a pretty high speed. And we were right behind the black truck, and the black truck was like bounced back and hit my vehicle a little bit. But my girlfriend at the time, she's not my wife, she's a nurse. Her and I got out of my vehicle. We weren't hurt when the truck bounced back at us. We got out of our vehicle and made sure the guy was okay. He was in shock a little bit, the guy that drove the truck. But the woman in the car and the whole front end was crushed. She, for some reason, got out of the car immediately. There's like glass falling off of her. She's like bleeding. Her head's cut. Her arm looks like broken. Her leg looks messed up. And she kind of walks across the intersection. And my girlfriend went and caught her before she hit the ground because she was in shock. And the only thing she cared about was talking to her husband in that moment. Like, so there's a couple of things that struck me in that moment. One, this is a very busy intersection and nobody else got out of the car to help, just my girlfriend and I. And this is probably 50 people at the intersection, just filming it, sitting in the car, listening to music, acting frustrated. So we got out, we helped the woman, the guy, and we called 911. The woman didn't have her phone, so she wanted to talk to her husband. She gave me the number. I called her husband, told her husband she's okay, and then I put her on the phone with her husband, and she talked to her husband, and the whole thing, like, something about this moment like solidified. Like, in life, we get so carried away and wrapped around all these big things we're after, but when something serious happens, often we focus on what really matters, which in that case was a woman's husband. Like, she wasn't talking about being late for work or anything else. She just wanted to talk to her husband and say, I'm okay. Yeah, so that solidified me writing the book and the topic of the book. It was like this voice, it was like hit me hard and said, this is what you need to write the book on. And the book is really a focused memoir around the topic of where I've ignored those small moments in front of me and what it's cost me because I was so busy chasing like this big ambitious dream that I had blinders on and let relationships fall apart and let my health fall apart and let everything else fall apart because I was so focused on this macro level goal. So yeah, that was the moment that solidified this is what I should write the book about.
Mm. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs can relate to what you just said about ignoring the smaller moments and just focusing on the big goals, driving forward, pushing forward all the time. Gotta go. This is what we're
Yeah.
going for. And you're right. Doing that, it has a cost. But for someone who is looped into that kind of a macro pattern, it takes a while to undo that, as I'm sure you've experienced. Well, I know you've experienced it because I've read, I'm not all the way through the book, but I've read most of it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, how did you start deconstructing that loop in your own life? Was it? I can't imagine it was just immediate right after that accident.
I had to do a lot of reflection, and the reflection was like, why did this relationship fail? Why, did my company only go so far? And I tend to reflect a lot, and I realized, leading up to that accident, and while I was writing the book, that I had become sort of a goal chaser. You finish one goal. Like, I remember I finished the Ironman World Championship in 2015, and I never thought to myself, this took me 10 years to get here. I was automatically thinking about the next goal. And then when I set the next big goal, I ignored all the stuff in front of me again. And relationships, dwindled. My friendships fell apart. And it was a very lonely journey. But I checked the box. I got the next goal. Then I was like, okay, what's next? It's like this cycle, this rat race I found myself in. And I realized after that reflection that I need to have more balance. And I'm not suggesting you just smell all the roses. I'm suggesting you have some intentionality behind the moments in front of you and the moments you want, the big goal you want to go after. And one of the things I came to realize was if I would have paid more attention to things right in front of me versus being hyper focused on that big goal, I may have realized that that big goal I thought I wanted was not the goal I really wanted. But I became so hyper focused, like no matter what, I've got to do this goal, that I didn't pay attention to the signs in front of me that said maybe that next Ironman triathlon is not that big a deal. You've already done 23. Why do you need to do 24, right? And what is the cost of doing that 24th one when you're trying to build a business, for instance? So yeah, it's about showing up with some intention in the small moments. And I'm not suggesting you let go of the big goals, but having more of a balance, which I think we all struggle with. And I realize in life, like for me, balance is not a daily thing. It's more of a macro thing. So like for last year, for like 5 months, I worked on my business for probably 13 hours a day on average. But then, December and November last year, I took some time off. I got married. I went to the Middle East, took a vacation, and had fun on my birthday. And, so it's a balance, but it doesn't have to be on a daily basis. Some people think that balance has to be every single day. I think it has to be in your life as a whole and whatever works for you.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right about that. It has to, just like we were talking earlier about your version of success, it's not going to look the same for every person. But as you were talking and explaining this, I just had this visualization in my mind of somebody standing on like a platform, right? And there's all these moments in between the next platform. And what people often do is just jump from one platform. They're jumping over moments to get to milestones. And I was thinking, maybe instead of jumping, if you're a visual type of person, I'm sure you're following the imagery. Maybe instead of jumping from one platform to another, we just walk. We walk.
Yeah.
That way we can catch some of those moments in between.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. And through that walking journey, you may realize that the platform you're going after is not the right platform either,
Yeah, it gives you enough
that
time
walking
to course
informs
correct.
you. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And we
100
often,
Go ahead.
it's like high performers, we often ignore that. We're just trying to jump as far as we could jump as quick as we can go, right?
Yep. It's a very easy, it's all patterns. It's a very easy pattern to get caught up on, especially if you're the type of person who, like you, is fiercely independent, maybe has a little bit of chip on their shoulder saying, you can't tell me I can't do it. Watch this. Yeah, it's a lot easier to get stuck. And that's why I love this book so much, and why I think it's so important for people to understand. Like, this isn't a manual like we were talking earlier about. Take these 5 steps and all of a sudden you'll be enlightened and in the moment everywhere. I know.
Right.
It's all about raising your awareness and just becoming more aware. And that it's honestly helping me do that in my everyday life right now, which is, again, I'm so happy that you're here to explain it and go into more depth about it. And just going back to the entrepreneurship lens a little bit, how has this experience and this kind of reflection helped you in your current business?
It's helped me gain perspective. When I write a book, it's transformational for me, which I think it should be. Any book should be transformational for the author, as well as somebody who reads it. So I transform writing the book, and I try to be congruent with my message. So right now with my company, when I get hyper focused on like, okay, we have to make $12 million this year, for instance, I have to like zoom out a little bit and look at the progress and the steps we've taken to get there, and the connections with my team and the connections with our clients, with prospects, and just really look at those micro moments, and then try to, when I'm having a meeting with my team, appreciate that micro moment and not focus purely on, the outcome of getting whatever, $1 million a month. It's like, the journey and these small changes and this interactions are important, and they make us who we are. And I have to also step back and think that for me, like how we feel on a daily basis matters, which ultimately means how we feel on a hourly and a minute by minute basis matters. So I try to think about that too. Like, life is really a collection of these micro moments. And we often forget that, but these micro moments dictate how we feel. And we can alter that if we show up with the right intention. So if I'm in a meeting and I show up with the right intention to make sure the meeting goes well, my team feels empowered, that's more than likely it's going to happen, which will more than likely make the macro goal realized. If I'm want to have a great relationship, which I do, of course, and I set the intention for the kind of micro moment of a dinner, that the intention is we're going to have a great time no matter what. We're going to connect at a deeper level. Then if the waiter spills something or messes the order up, I don't let that derail us. So that makes the relationship at a higher level better, right? So it's like having that intention and showing up with that intention in those small moments, I think really affect the overall arc of your life.
Beautifully said. Absolutely beautifully said. And I couldn't agree more. Showing up with intention. I think that was the key word right there, is showing up with intention. And you're 100% right. If you put that intention on those people that you work with, that you build your business life around, then you will get to those macro goals. It's just like Gary Vee says, you as the CEO, your employees don't work for you. You work for your employees, because they're the ones that help you get to these big old goals that are in your head.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So in that vein, in helping other people reach their goals, I have this book. I also have 9 more of this book behind me.
I see that. I appreciate you getting my book. It
So
means a lot to me.
absolutely, my pleasure. And again, thank you for writing it. So what I'm going to do to help get this information out and help more people is, if guys listening, watching, if you want to read this book, I will send it to you. I will send it to you for absolutely free. It's not one of these you just pay shipping deals. I will send it to you for $0. But it's not free in effort. There are 2 things that you'll need to do. You'll need to, number 1, be subscribed to this YouTube channel, GYET Podcast on YouTube. And number 2, you'll need to sign up for my email list. And of course, put your address in there, because how am I going to send you the book if I don't have your address, right? So do those 2 things. Let me know that you want this book, either sending me an email or messaging me through the YouTube app, however you want to do it. Let me know that you've signed up, that you want this. I will send it to you for free. And I'm also going to follow up with you in about a month to see what you thought and what one takeaway from the book you're implementing into your life. Because this is like Christian said, this is about transformation, not just, I don't want you to get this and just use it as a coaster on your coffee table. I want action takers. So if that's you, follow those steps and I'll send you that book for free. Well, Christian, this has been an amazing conversation. I can't thank you enough for taking the time to come on, for all the work that you're doing out here. And as someone who is in the personal development space, on the journey himself, I want to give you the floor for the last 30 seconds or so. If there's anything else that you want to relay to the audience, anything that we might have missed, or one point that you want to leave us with.
I think one thing that holds people back is not having clarity on what they want to accomplish. So most of us in life know what we don't want, but we don't know what we do want. And I think that hinders the progress. So as an entrepreneur, or someone trying to have a better relationship, I think it's important to know what relationship you want to have, what business you want to have, and have some specificity behind that. And then the steps will become much clearer. Because it's hard to take action when it's overly complicated. Complexity is the enemy of execution, as they say. So having that clarity, which will require some work to get the clarity, will give you specific steps to take, which will make it much easier. It'll be simpler.
Yeah, again, very well said. And I can testify that that is the absolute truth. I was on a call yesterday with my coach, and he was helping me guide through something, a live event, the first live event that I'm going to put on for Get Your Entrepreneurship Together. I wasn't clear on the steps and how I was going to make it happen, but he helped me get that clarity, and now things are going to be moving forward. So Absolutely well said. Again, Christian, thank you so much for coming on, man. It's been a pleasure having you here.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, Brian. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Well, you know what to do. Like the show, share it out with your network. Again, you never know whose life that you can touch and positively impact with just a simple and free share. Thank you so much for your time and attention, and peace. We'll see you in the next one.